I never imagined the day would come when my own daughter would look me in the eyes and tell me I was nothing but a burden. Her exact words still cut through me like a knife. Go find somewhere else to die. Mom, you're useless now. For a moment, I stood frozen, unable to believe what I had just heard. After all, I had raised this girl with every ounce of love, patience, and sacrifice I could muster for over 4 decades. I had given her the best of me, my health, my youth, my sleepless nights, my prayers. And yet here I was, being discarded as though all those years meant nothing. With trembling hands, I began packing my belongings. It's strange how a lifetime can collapse into a few suitcases and a single box of photographs. 43 years of marriage, memories, and the trinkets of a shared life with my husband, Robert, all reduced to what I could carry. I moved through the rooms of the house like a stranger, each corner whispering of birthdays, anniversaries, and quiet evenings by the fire. Now those walls seemed to belong to someone else. I had always been an obedient wife and a dutiful mother. So, like the obedient woman I had been trained to be, I did not fight. I packed silently. My daughter, Victoria, leaned against the doorframe as though she were supervising a hired worker, tapping her manicured nails against her phone, glancing at her watch impatiently. She wanted me gone quickly, as if my very presence inconvenienced her. 3 days later, I found myself sitting in a lawyer's office, a place I had never once imagined I would be after Robert's death. Robert had always been careful, thoughtful about our future, but nothing prepared me for what I was about to discover. The man I had trusted with my life, the man I thought I knew better than anyone else, had apparently been playing a much deeper game than I ever realized. That day, as I listened to the lawyer, it became clear that the story wasn't going to end the way Victoria had planned. She believed she had me beaten, cornered, defeated, but she had no idea that life had one more twist in store. Victoria was about to learn something very important. Sometimes, the pawn becomes the queen. So if you're watching this, sit back and listen closely. Don't forget to subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Because what I'm about to share isn't just my story, it's a lesson. A lesson about greed, betrayal, and the kind of justice that life delivers when you least expect it. 2 months ago, I was Margaret Sullivan, a loyal wife of 43 years, a devoted mother to a daughter who never appreciated the sacrifices I made. My world shattered when Robert, my husband, died suddenly of a heart attack at 71. I thought that losing him was the worst thing that could possibly happen to me, but I was wrong. My daughter, dressed in her expensive designer clothes, swept into my grief like a vulture circling over prey. She wrapped her fake sympathy in honeyed words. "Oh, Mom, this must be so hard for you. You can't possibly stay in this big house all by yourself. It's too much. The stairs, the memories, the upkeep, it's not good for your health." Her words sounded caring, but I should have known better. Beneath that polished tone was calculation. You see, Victoria had always been Robert's favorite, his little princess, his golden child who could do no wrong. And when she married Kevin, an ambitious investment banker, and started producing grandchildren, Robert's affection for them only grew. Meanwhile, I was just the wife, the one who cooked, cleaned, kept the house warm, and ensured everyone else's lives ran smoothly. After Robert's funeral, Victoria's visits became more frequent. But they weren't visits of comfort. No, they were business meetings in disguise. She'd arrive with Kevin, spreading glossy real estate, brochures and pamphlets for retirement communities across the dinner table. "Mom, look at this one. Isn't it lovely? Activities, people your age, no responsibilities. You'd be so much happier here." I smiled politely, but inside I knew the truth. What they meant was no inheritance to divide, no inconvenient mother standing in the way, no one to slow down their plans. But it wasn't until one Tuesday afternoon, 6 weeks after Robert's death, that their mask slipped completely. Victoria showed up with Kevin, their BMW idling in the driveway, and 2 large suitcases in tow. I should have recognized what was about to happen. "Mom," she said breezily, as though it were the most normal thing in the world. "Kevin got a promotion, and we need to move into town immediately. This house is perfect for us. We've made a decision, we're moving in today." I blinked at her, not quite comprehending. "Move in? But this is my home." That was when I saw it, the cold glint in her eyes, the calculation she no longer bothered to hide. "Actually, Mom," she said, her voice sharp with triumph, "according to Dad's will, everything belongs to me. The house, the investments, all of it. I've been letting you stay here out of kindness, but now it's time for you to find your own place. Her words hit me like a hammer blow. My knees almost gave way. Victoria, surely there's been some mistake. But she didn't flinch. She didn't soften. She looked me square in the eye and delivered the cruelest line of all. Find somewhere else to die. You're useless now. And just like that, my daughter, the child I had carried, raised, and protected, cast me out of my own home. I left that house the very next morning. Though it didn't feel like leaving, it felt like being exiled. My daughter stood at the doorway, arms crossed, watching me pack like I was an unwelcome tenant being evicted. 2 suitcases. That's all I carried after a lifetime of marriage, motherhood, and sacrifice. 43 years of loyalty, and labor boiled down to a couple of bags and a small box of photographs that no one else in the world would even care about. Kevin, my son-in-law, loaded my luggage into the trunk of their luxury BMW. He didn't meet my eyes, not even once. He just handled me the way one would handle a garbage bag that needed to be set on the curb. Efficient, quick, emotionless. Margaret, he said flatly, you'll enjoy having your independence again. No more house repairs, no more property taxes. It's for the best. What he meant was, no more home for you. Victoria stood nearby, scrolling through her phone, glancing at her watch as though I was delaying her schedule. When I paused, my hand resting on the banister I had polished for years, she sighed impatiently. There's a senior complex on Maple Street, she said in a bright, chirpy voice like someone recommending a new restaurant. Very affordable. I'm sure they have openings affordable. That word stung. My husband had left behind over $30 million in assets, and yet my daughter thought I belonged in a facility where the elderly are dumped when no one wants them. Before I knew it, we were pulling up to the Sunset Inn, a rundown roadside motel that looked like it. Hadn't been updated since the 1970s. The neon sign flickered. The carpet inside the lobby was threadbare, and when I stepped into the tiny room, I was greeted by thin towels, paper walls, and the lingering smell of mildew. Victoria pressed 2 crumpled $100 bills into my hand the way you might tip a hotel maid. This should cover you for a few days, she said sweetly. Kevin will transfer some money into your account once we sort through Dad's paperwork, my money, my own inheritance. She had stolen everything, and now she was pretending to be generous, with crumbs from a feast that rightfully belonged to me. After they left, I sat on the edge of that sagging mattress and stared at the peeling wallpaper. It was surreal. Only hours earlier, I had been in my home, surrounded by decades of memories, and now I was in a place that smelled of stale smoke and loneliness. Tears slid down my cheeks, but beneath the grief, something else began to stir. A quiet voice inside me whispered, "This doesn't add up." You see, Robert, my late husband, had always been meticulous about his affairs. He was stubborn, yes, and often patronizing when it came to financial matters, but he was never careless. Years ago, he had shown me his will, going through each clause, explaining where things would go and why, and I was absolutely certain that what Victoria told me was not what I had seen in that document. Robert wasn't cruel. He wasn't careless. He wouldn't have left me with nothing. The next morning, I gathered what little courage I had left and used the motel's unreliable Wi-Fi to look up the number of Robert's attorney, Mr. Harrison Fitzgerald. He had handled our house purchase and most of Robert's business dealings over the years. He was a man Robert trusted. The bus ride downtown cost me nearly all the cash Victoria had given me, but I didn't care. My heart pounded the whole way. What if Victoria was telling the truth? What if Robert had secretly changed everything? What if I really had been left with nothing? By the time I stepped into the law office, my hands were shaking. Mr. Fitzgerald was an older gentleman, silver hair neatly combed, glasses perched on his nose, and the calm presence of a man who had seen it all. When his secretary announced me, he looked genuinely surprised. "Margaret, my dear," he said warmly, "I was wondering when you'd come in. I tried calling your house several times, but Victoria told me you were traveling." Traveling. That was the lie my daughter had fed him. "Mr. Fitzgerald," I whispered, "I need to ask you about Robert's will." His brows furrowed. "Of course. Didn't Victoria provide you with your copy?" I gave her the original and several duplicates after the reading. My stomach dropped. "The reading?" I leaned forward. "Mr. Fitzgerald, I was never told about any reading. Victoria told me I inherited nothing." For the first time, alarm flashed across his face. He pulled a heavy file from his cabinet, flipping through the pages with urgency. Margaret, that's impossible. Your husband's will was very clear. And then, as he began to read aloud, the ground shifted beneath my feet. Robert had not abandoned me. Robert had protected me. He had left me the house. He had left me 70% of all financial assets, $23 million. And to Victoria? A trust of $10 million, locked until her 45th birthday. Contingent on how she treated me after his death? Robert had known. Somehow, he had anticipated this betrayal. Victoria's greed had cost her everything, and suddenly the pawn began to see the outline of the queen. I sat frozen in that polished office, chair, as Mr. Fitzgerald read the words that changed everything. To my beloved wife, Margaret Ann Sullivan, I leave our primary residence at 847 Oakwood Drive, including all furnishings and personal effects. I also grant her 70% of all financial accounts and assets, totaling approximately $23 million. I blinked in disbelief. $23 million. The house. Everything. My breath caught as he continued reading. To my daughter, Victoria Sullivan Hayes, I leave the sum of $10 million to be held in trust. Distribution shall begin upon her 45th birthday and is contingent upon her treatment of her mother after my death. My eyes widened. Contingent on her treatment of me. Robert had known. He had seen her arrogance, her sense of entitlement, her careless cruelty, and he had taken measures. I leaned forward, whispering, Mr. Fitzgerald. Victoria told me I had nothing. She said she inherited everything. His face darkened with fury. Margaret, what your daughter has done is elder abuse and fraud. That will you just heard me read? It was updated 6 months before Robert's passing. If Victoria presented you with different documents, they were forged or pulled from an earlier draft. What she's done is not only immoral, it's criminal. The words swirled around me. Fraud, abuse, criminal. I remembered Victoria standing in my living room with her cold smile, telling me I was useless, telling me to find somewhere else to die. And suddenly, a surge of strength rose within me, strength I hadn't felt in years. For decades, I had been the obedient one, the caretaker, the background character in Robert and Victoria's lives. But right here in this office, I realized something important. I wasn't powerless anymore. There's more, Fitzgerald continued, his eyes glinting. The trust Robert set up for Victoria states that if she fails to treat you with dignity and respect, the entire $10 million reverts to you. By throwing you out, by lying, by manipulating the will, she's already violated those terms. I covered my mouth. Are you saying? He nodded slowly. I'm saying your daughter just lost her entire inheritance. Margaret, you aren't inheriting $23 million. You are inheriting $33 million. Plus the house, plus all personal property. Every last bit is yours. The irony almost made me laugh. My daughter had been so eager to snatch everything from me that she had triggered the very trap Robert designed to protect me. What happens now? I asked, my voice trembling between fear and exhilaration. Mr. Fitzgerald leaned back in his chair, folding his hands. Now we contact the authorities. We report the fraud, and then we call Victoria and inform her of what she's really done. A warmth spread through me, a fire I hadn't felt in years. For the first time since Robert's death, I wasn't a victim. I wasn't homeless. I wasn't powerless. I was holding all the cards. The next few hours unfolded like a whirlwind. Fitzgerald's office became what he jokingly called Operation Justice. He phoned the police, the banks, and a private investigator. Every account Victoria thought she controlled was frozen. Every credit card tied to her fake inheritance was cut off. Even the utilities she had smugly switched into her name were suspended pending ownership verification. Detective Rodriguez, a sharp-eyed woman with a calm but firm presence, reviewed the forged will Victoria had shown me. This isn't the work of an amateur, she said firmly. These forgeries are professional. Someone had help creating them, likely your son-in-law, given his financial background. My stomach twisted. Kevin, of course. The man who had loaded my suitcases into his car like I was garbage had been part of this scheme from the beginning. Within hours, everything they thought they had gained was slipping through their fingers. Victoria's credit cards declined at the boutique she loved. Her bank account froze, and she had no idea yet that the police were building a case against her. At exactly 3:47 p.m., my phone rang. Victoria's name flashed across the screen. I answered. Hello, Victoria. Her voice was sharp, panicked. Mom, what's going on? The bank says all of Dad's accounts are frozen. There's been some kind of mistake. I let the silence stretch before answering. I'm sitting in Mr. Fitzgerald's office. You remember him? Daddy's attorney. The one who read the real will to an empty room. The reading you told him. I was too distraught to attend. The silence on the other end was heavy, suffocating. I continued, my voice calm but strong. You lied, Victoria. You forged papers. You stole from me. And guess what? Your father was smarter than you gave him credit for. Her voice cracked. Mom, you don't understand. I was protecting you from the stress of managing all that money. You've never dealt with investments. I cut her off. You were throwing me out of my own home. You were handing me $200, like pocket change while planning to live off millions that were never yours. Her tone shifted, desperation creeping in. Mom, please. Let's meet and talk about this reasonably. We can work something out. I glanced at Detective Rodriguez, who was listening closely, jotting notes. Oh, we'll meet, Victoria. At the courthouse, when you're arraigned. Her sharp intake of breath told me she finally understood. You wouldn't dare press charges against your own daughter. I felt something harden inside me, a cold resolve. Watch me. And then I hung up. The silence in Mr. Fitzgerald's office after I ended that call was heavy. But for once, it wasn't the silence of defeat. It was the silence of victory brewing. Detective Rodriguez leaned forward, her sharp eyes locking onto mine. Mrs. Sullivan, you need to understand something. What your daughter did isn't just greedy, it's a felony. Fraud, elder financial abuse, conspiracy. The courts don't take this lightly. I nodded slowly. For decades, I had been conditioned to shield Victoria from consequences. Every time she made a mistake, I had been there with excuses. She's just young. She's just stressed. She'll grow out of it. But now she was a grown woman who had thrown her own mother onto the street. My sympathy had run dry. Do whatever you must, I said quietly. She made her choice. Now she can live with the consequences. That evening, Victoria and Kevin's perfect world began to crack. At their favorite restaurant, the waiter presented them with a bill Kevin's platinum card could no longer pay. Their mortgage application for a vacation property in Florida was denied on the spot. Even their country club membership was suspended pending verification of funds. It was as though the universe itself was stripping away their illusions one by one. Victoria called again, her voice shrill and frantic. Mom, you don't understand what you're doing. If this goes public, Kevin and I will be humiliated. People will talk. I almost laughed at the irony. Oh, darling, people are already talking. The bank, the police, the attorney's office. You should start practicing humility. It's about to become your full-time job. Her scream on the other end was cut short when I ended the call. For once, I felt no guilt. The very next morning, Detective Rodriguez arrived at my temporary apartment. 2 uniformed officers followed her. It's time, she said simply. I followed them to the courthouse, my hands trembling slightly. It wasn't fear this time. It was anticipation. For years, I had lived in the shadows of my daughter's arrogance. Now I was about to step into the light of truth. We sat in a plain courtroom as Victoria and Kevin were brought in, their faces pale, their designer clothes doing little to mask the panic in their eyes. Victoria's gaze darted toward me, and for the first time, I didn't see superiority or power in her eyes. I saw fear, pure, unfiltered fear. Victoria Sullivan Hayes, the judge intoned. You stand accused of elder financial abuse, fraud, and conspiracy. How do you plead? Her voice cracked. Not guilty. But the stack of evidence Mr. Fitzgerald and Detective Rodriguez had compiled told a different story. The forged signatures, the altered pages, the bank records showing sudden transfers. Even Kevin's emails recovered from his deleted folder, where he coldly discussed how to get rid of the old. Woman, quickly. Each piece of evidence was another nail in the coffin of their lies. When the prosecution rested, Victoria finally broke. She stood, her face blotchy from tears, and turned toward me. Mom, please, don't do this. I made mistakes, but I'm still your daughter. You can't let them send me to prison. For a moment, my heart ached. She was my child, after all. I remembered holding her as a baby, kissing her scraped knees, staying up through the night when she had fevers. But then I remembered the bags at my feet, her cold voice telling me to find another place to die. And just like that, my resolve hardened again. I lifted my chin. I didn't put you here, Victoria. You did. You wanted everything. Now you can live with the nothing you've earned. Her face crumpled as the gavel struck. Bail denied. Defendant will remain in custody until trial. The sound echoed like justice itself. Outside the courthouse, the autumn wind brushed against my cheeks. For the first time in years, I felt light, free, powerful. Mr. Fitzgerald walked beside me, a proud smile tugging at his lips. "Robert would be proud of you," he said softly. "He knew you had this strength inside you. He just wanted to make sure you had the tools to use it." I looked up at the sky, tears brimming in my eyes. "Thank you, Robert," I whispered. "You didn't just protect me. You gave me back my life." That evening I returned to Oakwood Drive, my house, my home, the place my husband and I had built together. As I stepped through the front door, memories flooded every corner. Sunday dinners, Christmas mornings, quiet nights by the fire. But this time the memories weren't painful. They were mine again. The locks had been changed, but now they were changed back. The house was restored to its rightful owner, and for the first time in months, I slept in my own bed, in my own room, with peace as my companion instead of sorrow. The morning sunlight spilled across my bedroom floor like a gentle blessing. For the first time in months, I didn't wake up to panic or despair. I woke up in my home with the quiet hum of safety wrapping itself around me. As I sipped coffee at the kitchen table, the same table where Robert and I had shared 1,000 mornings, I finally allowed myself to exhale. This was my life now, mine to shape, mine to protect. In the weeks that followed, the case against Victoria and Kevin grew ironclad. The investigators unearthed a trail of deception stretching back years. Loans taken in my name, documents falsified, even hidden accounts funneling money into luxury vacations they had claimed were business trips. Every revelation made me wonder how long my daughter had been capable of such cruelty. But alongside the sorrow was something stronger, relief. Relief that Robert's foresight had shielded me, that justice was no longer a dream but a reality. The trial itself was swift. Kevin, ever the coward, struck a deal and testified against Victoria in exchange for a reduced sentence. His testimony sealed her fate. The day the verdict was read, the courtroom was silent except for the pounding of my heart. On the charge of elder financial abuse, guilty. On the charge of fraud, guilty. On the charge of conspiracy, guilty. Victoria collapsed into her chair, sobbing. The judge's sentence was merciless yet just. 7 years in prison, with no early release. I watched her being led away in handcuffs. There was no triumph in my heart, only clarity. She had chosen greed over love, betrayal over family. This was the harvest of her own planting. Life after the trial was strangely quiet. The newspapers ran their headlines. The neighbors whispered, and then the world moved on. But I remained, standing stronger than ever. I hired a gardener to restore Robert's roses, which had withered under Victoria's careless neglect. I reopened the library room and spent hours among books I had once abandoned in grief. I donated a portion of my inheritance to the local women's shelter because I knew too well what it felt like to be discarded, forgotten, unwanted. Every act of rebuilding was not just for me, but for the woman I had been forced to become, the one who had risen from betrayal and found her own strength. One afternoon, while sorting through Robert's desk, I found a sealed envelope addressed to me. My hands trembled as I opened it. "My dearest Margaret," the letter began. "If you're reading this, it means my time has come. Please know that every decision I made was to protect you. I worried that Victoria's hunger for wealth would blind her to love, and I couldn't bear the thought of you being left defenseless. But I also knew you were stronger than you realized. You were always the heart of this family, the anchor in every storm. Don't let her cruelty define you. Live, travel, laugh again. Our home, our memories, our fortune, they are yours. Because you, my love, were always my greatest treasure." Tears streamed down my cheeks. But they weren't tears of sorrow. They were tears of gratitude, of love that reached beyond the grave. And so I began anew. I traveled to places Robert and I had once dreamed of. Paris, Rome, the quiet countryside of Ireland, where his grandparents had lived. I walked through art museums, tasted wine in Tuscany, stood on cliffs overlooking oceans, and felt alive again. Everywhere I went, I carried Robert's words with me. Live, laugh again. And I did. As for Victoria, prison transformed her from a woman who once looked down on me into someone who now lived under strict rules, stripped of luxury, stripped of control. I didn't gloat, but I didn't pity her either. She had made her choices. When she finally wrote to me from prison, The words were full of apologies, pleas for forgiveness, and promises to change. I read her letter carefully, then tucked it away in a drawer. Perhaps one day I will answer. Perhaps not. Forgiveness, after all, is not owed. It is earned. Now, when I sit in my garden among Robert's roses, I no longer feel abandoned or broken. I feel whole. My daughter thought she could throw me away, but instead she gave me back my freedom. My husband's wisdom gave me strength I didn't know I had, and I, Margaret Sullivan, finally stepped into the light of my own life. The woman they thought was powerless turned out to be unstoppable.